welcome back to the ZX Spectrum Compilation Chart Challenge. Let's have our usual look at how my physical collection of compilations has grown to kick things off, though I do need to say that this picture and the stats are now significantly out of date, so look out for a big jump in the next episode. I've been busy in the last few weeks building and maintaining the compilationszx.com website, so I haven't had much time for reviews, but now that project is finally in a state that I'm happy with, I'm back in the fold, and this time I'm going right back to the beginning, to where the compilation began in earnest, and that is with the formation of a certain company called Beau Jolly. Beau Jolly will be a familiar name for most 8-bit computer gamers. Formed by Colin Ashby and Nigel Mason, and drawing on their music industry background, they were looking to replicate the KTEL Hits approach and bring it to video games. Their story and background's a really interesting one, and if you want to know more, then grab a copy of Retro Gamer magazine, issue number 101, where the excellent Graham Mason chats with Colin and Nigel while charting their story. The name Beau Jolly and the logo of a gent quaffing a glass of red were born out of the pair's shared love of fine wine, and the names for both of their businesses, Beau Jolly for games and Nouveau for music, were taken from the Beaujolais Nouveau fine wine that's released once a year on the third Thursday of November. Beau Jolly's first bit of business was to license the soon-to-be bankrupt Imagine Software's back catalogue, but due to the perilous state of Imagine's finances, they eventually ended up buying the entirety of Imagine's published stock, about 500,000 cassette tapes worth. And that's how the first ever Beau Jolly release came about. Value Pack 16K was nothing more than a repackaging of already produced cassettes into fancy new packaging to be sold at the bargain price of $14.99, and the public lapped them up. No doubt helped by a reported £250,000 TV advertising campaign. Soon after, a 48K Spectrum version was released, along with Commodore 64 and VIC-20 versions. So for this episode of the ZX Spectrum Compilation Chart Challenge, we're looking at both of Beau Jolly's early Spectrum releases. As they both contain completely different titles, with the 16K version having 4 games and the 48K version 6, they'll both be reviewed and scored individually. So let's start by taking a look at the compilation that started it all, Value Pack 16K. Released a month or so before the expansion onto other systems, Value Pack 16K was released for $14.99 in 1984 and featured all but one of Imagine's 16K output, with only Schizoid missing out. The games included Molar Maul, Diddums, Jumpin' Jack, and the hit that made everything possible for Imagine, Arcadia. There were no proper reviews of the value packs back in the day, but this new approach of licensing other companies' material was certainly newsworthy. PCW issue 24 reported on the sale of Imagine's software catalogue, with prices of £16.49 and £21.40 quoted for the two versions. In their Cheapskates corner, Big K called the compilation Beau Jolly's equivalent of the Party 6, and they quoted prices of $9.99 for the 4-game pack and $14.99 for the 6. But luckily, C&VG were around to clear things up when they reported the correct prices and game lists, and advised that if you missed out on some of these old Imagine favourites, now's your chance to catch up. Right then, let's get a look at Value Pack 16K. It's in a nice large square box, which looks a bit odd on the shelf, but it's very nice looking. I love the nice design on the outside. It's got a purpley blue colour. The games that are on the cover, which are a little bit odd in that this was the very first Beau Jolly release, but the games that are included, or the iconography to represent the games that are included, covers not just this version, it covers the Spectrum and, I assume, the two Commodore versions as well. So you'll find some images for the games that aren't necessarily on this pack, but I think it's really nice cartoon style drawing. It's really well laid out. I think the graphic design they've done is really good. We turn over and have a look at the back, and you've got the information about each of the games, which is directly taken from Imagine's own information. It's laid out in the same way that Imagine did on their cassette inlays as well, but it's just a beautifully presented pack. You look on the edge, you know, it gives you the name, it tells you the 4 games here as well. I just think it's really beautiful. I like this little inset that's cut so that you can get it open. I love that when you do open it, it's all attached, it's all one piece. It's just a beautiful piece of work. We then take out the booklet. It's another large, it's square, it's full colour. Each game gets its own page. There's Arcadia, you know, you get the full backstory, the controls, the loading instructions. So let's have a look at our Diddums, Molar Maul, and of course finally, when I can flick to the right page, we've got Jumping Jack. It's just an excellent, well put together package that I have absolutely no complaints for. There's a page there about some information and a guarantee from Beau Jolly that if your tape didn't work, they would replace it. Yeah, there's not much more to say. It's lovely. It's lovely. The only thing left to look at then, once again, another thumbs up from me, is just look at that, how nice that is. They've included the plastic tray. The way they've set out those tapes, it just looks beautiful. I can't say, you know, I can't stop drooling over this as a compilation package. The tapes themselves are simply the Imagine tapes. As I said in the intro, they just bought up 500,000 already produced Imagine tapes, so take them out of the cassette case, or maybe they weren't even in cassette cases, but just slip them into these new shiny boxes and off we go. So it just, everything oozes quality, it really does. And I love that everything is uniform. It's just done so well, and I think any other company is going to struggle to match the quality of what was the first properly commercial licensed compilation. Arcadia was originally released by Imagine in 1983 and would have cost you the princely sum of £5.50. An odd figure, but maybe that included postage for mail order. An interesting take on the Galaga or Space Invaders style game. Each level has distinctly different antagonists, and not just in appearance. The way they move and the tactics required to defeat them were different level to level. Level 1 sees the invaders moving in a diagonal pattern, which is pretty unique. Which means that you do need to utilise the handy thrust control that has you move up the screen towards the halfway. Level 2 is a little more standard as enemies swarm down the screen. But level 3 and 4 become much more erratic. Whilst there's a lot of flicker, and this is very common on 16K games, and it would be unfair to let that detract from what is a very playable game. It's no surprise that this became Imagine's first big hit, funding expansion and growth. And though not quite reaching the heights of Death Chase or Jetpack, Arcadia rightly sits towards the top of the best 16K games. To make sure the limited architecture is taken into account, I'm going to be a little more generous with my 16K reviews. And when scoring Arcadia as a 16K game, I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. Our Diddums was also released in 1983 for the same price of £5.50. Unfortunately, it didn't fare as well as Arcadia. As was Imagine's gift back in the early 80s, the game includes a detailed backstory about a teddy bear trying to climb out of the toy box to be reunited with its child, only to be thwarted by the rest of the toys. To succeed in freeing Teddy from each of the screens, you must collect colour oblong blocks that must be dropped on the top of the screen to create a colourful ladder. Various toys will try and get in your way, but to be honest, in the early levels, they're little more than a minor inconvenience, and what's a bigger challenge is the buggy gameplay. That means blocks are sometimes difficult to get onto the ladder, and even when you do complete the ladder, often this doesn't trigger the next level like it's supposed to do, and you have to systematically remove and replace the blocks until the sequence finally does trigger. Later levels do get a little more tricky as the adversaries start taking more random paths. but there's a jack in the box in the corner that you can use to freeze the toys for a few seconds. But the overall fiddliness of the blocks and the repetitive gameplay means that despite the colourful graphics and nice large central character, I wasn't that keen to play on for much longer. And even with the 16k score bump, our Diddums still only gets 5 out of 10. With only 16k to play with, a great many early games suffered from too much ambition, and to some extent dental hygiene simulator Molar Maul does just that. Once again released in '83 for the odd price of £5.50, the game sees you take control of a toothbrush, and you must stop the plaque build-up on the huge mouthful of teeth before they are irretrievably rotted. Control of your toothbrush is fiddly at first, especially due to the odd shape of the play area, but if I'm honest, that actually added to the gameplay, and I had a lot of fun putting toothpaste on the brush, chasing bacteria from teeth to teeth, and then cleaning up the plaque that they leave behind, which is represented by the changing colours of the teeth. The task is fairly good fun, if a little simple. Use up 10 tubes of rapidly depleting toothpaste to move on to the next level before the bacteria destroys the teeth. But where the game falls down is the lack of any variety in the gameplay, and after 20 minutes I did feel like I'd had my fill. And on that basis, and given that it is fairly ingenious for a 16k game, I'm scoring Molar Maul 6 out of 10. By now we all know the drill. Jumping Jack was released by Imagine in 1983, can cost £5.50. Move on. Jumping Jack's one of those games that would be really easy to dismiss. It doesn't look great, the controls don't feel particularly tight, and the gameplay is simple at best. But get past that, and there's a lot of fun to be had. Your task is to jump through the holes in the moving platforms, whilst avoiding the holes, and as the levels go on, the baddies too. The looping platforms means you can try to avoid the holes by running off screen, but you will get trapped sometimes. Luckily, you only lose a life when you hit the bottom floor, so your whole progress isn't wasted. I enjoyed Jumping Jack a lot more than I was expecting to, and I found it quite addictive. So judging it as a 16k game, I'm going to give it a very respectable 7 out of 10. So that's Value Pack 16k. A nice compilation that shows why Imagine was so well thought of around the time, and also a good example of the quality that can be gained out of as little as 16k. Because after all, hey 16k, what does that get you today? I've already given the individual scores, and when totted up, that gives us an average rating of 6.25. You've heard me drooling over the packaging, which I have absolutely no issue in giving the maximum of 10 points. But with just 4 games on what would later come to look like a fairly high price point, the value for money score is going to take a hit. 25 points from the £15 price gives us 60p per point, so that only scores 5 points. Adding them up in my head and remembering to carry the 1, that gives Beau Jolly's Value Pack 16k an overall rating of 67.5%. So next up we've got Value Pack 48k. Also released around October 1984 and just in time for Christmas, featuring 6 48k games from Imagine's back catalogue. Those games were BC Bill, Cosmic Cruiser, Alchemist, Zip-Zap, Zzoom and Pedro. Okay, so we'll only take a quick look at Value Pack 48k because it is remarkably similar to the 16k version. Big difference is, it says 48k there, the yellow colouring has been changed for pink. And that theme has been followed throughout, so it's exactly the same on the front apart from the different games and the name. The image is exactly as it was on the 16k version. On the back we've got the same layout, but of course there are 6 games now on the 48k version, so no differences really. Still a really nice looking package. There are a couple of differences when we open up though, so I'll just show you those now. And the first one is that the lid now is completely separate, which I think is a bit disappointing that they've cheaped out on that. So there's one slight difference. The next difference is in the tapes. So we had 4 tapes, 1 game on each tape for the 16K version. On the 48K version, we've now got 3 tapes, and each tape has a game on each side. Because of that, they needed to then also put some new labels on. So we've not just got the old Imagine labels. I'm putting it in the wrong way up. We've now got these nice purple and pink labels that have been put on the cassettes, which I think look really good. So yeah, I mean, it's a little. Is it more fiddly? Is it better to have 2 on 1 tape instead of the clutter of extra tapes? I don't know. That's up for you to decide. But there you go. So that's the 2 differences that I noticed. The lid now separates from the box, and the cassettes are now double-sided with their own labels. The manual, following the pink theme again, exactly the same. You still get the extensive information about each game. There we have Zzoom, Pedro, BC Bill, Cosmic Cruiser, and then on this side we've got Zip-Zap and Alchemist. And yeah, exactly the same. Other than being 4 games, it's exactly the same as the version that we saw earlier. So there you have it. Value Pack 48K. BC Bill was never meant to be a politically correct game. You played the titular Bill, and as a typical red-blooded caveman, you have 2 urges: hunting and procreating, and your trusty club will help with both of them. Simply wander around the game's single screen, clubbing women over the head and then dragging them by the hair to your cave. Monogamy isn't Bill's thing either, so grab as many as you can. You'll need to keep them fed though if you want them to produce some healthy offspring. So give the roaming wildlife a whack and take their bloody carcasses to the cave too, as a treat for the women folk. You do have to watch out for some of the other creatures. The turtle's shell ain't for cracking, so stay away from them. Worse, a dinosaur will wander onto the play at some point and will happily munch on your animal prey, or your wife and kids, or you for that matter. They can be stopped by whacking them from behind. Sportsmanship hadn't been invented by that point, but your best bet is to steer clear, as they are erratic and can quickly turn and tear the very flesh from your bones. The game continues in this vein until you run out of wives and kids who've either been eaten or died from starvation. The graphics are okay and the presentation isn't bad, and whilst the sound is annoying, the music's not too bad for 1984, but unfortunately the gameplay feels more like a Game & Watch than a 48K home computer, so BC Bill scores 5 points. In Zzoom, you're flying the fastest, most deadly machine ever devised by man. Or so the instructions say. They also say that as you punch the launch button, you're slammed back into your seat as your craft hurtles through the air. But no one seems to have told the game designer this, and it feels nothing like the inlay writer's hyperbole suggests. A simple crosshair shooter, your job is to shoot down planes as they come into sight, and stop the killing of the refugees who are innocently trying to cross the screen. From where to where isn't really mentioned. The controls are smooth and fairly fast, though not enough to justify the title Zzoom, and you have a radar on the right of the screen and unlimited ammo for your twin guns to help you on your way. To give the game the merest hint of being a flight game, the controls are inverted, and to be honest, I think this is the most difficult part of the game. Almost every life I lost was due to careering into the ground because I got my up and down mixed up. And at the end of the day, there isn't much to Zzoom, and I don't think I'd ever go back to it now that I've tried it, and for that reason it can only score 5 out of 10. Pedro has spent years cultivating his garden and grows some of the most beautiful flowers in the whole of Mexico. Unfortunately for him, the local animals think they're also the tastiest plants in all of Mexico and are constantly trying to eat them. There are 2 strategies to employ to keep your garden stocked. Firstly, you can grab some bricks from the pile in the bottom right of the screen and block up the pathway that the pesky animals are using. Or secondly, restock the garden by planting seeds where gaps have been left. This all sounds like a nice and fairly unique game, that could be a lot of fun with some fairly nice graphics. And it would be if the controls responded anything like they should. Just moving up, down, left and right is a chore. I was never able to pick up a second brick even when I'd laid the first, and planting seeds was erratic at best. It's easy to say that Pedro was of its time, and would have seen better back in its day. But I'm sure even back then, it would have been more frustrating than fun. And I may be being a little generous when I give it 4 out of 10. Cosmic Cruiser has you attempting to rescue the crew of an attacked space station using just a jetpack and a space pistol, or your Cosmic Cruiser's exterior laser cannon in the bottom right of the screen. The aim is to blast holes in the station, enter through said holes, and return with a crewman from each room. Another exciting premise. But sadly, just like Pedro, another disappointment. Despite some nice graphics, especially the really colourful rotating halo of the space station, the actual rescue mechanics are so fiddly and unfair that I almost always ended up immediately losing a life and returning to my ship to do exactly the same thing over and over again. And even on the main exterior screen, getting grabbed by one of the space meanies has you dragged away, unable to free yourself from its grasp and your frustration growing. It really is a shame, as I can imagine that with a few tweaks this could have been a really novel take on what was even then becoming a tired genre. I do think that Cosmic Cruiser is at least playable, so it scores higher than Pedro, but I still can't give it any more than 5 points. Having been sent as the land's greatest alchemist to do battle with the evil warlock in his dread castle, you must search the various halls, chambers and dungeons for the 4 parts of the Spell of Destruction, the only magic that can defeat him. Reading the reviews from 1984, it appears that Alchemist was one of the very first arcade adventures, as all the reviewers were mind blown that this adventure could be played like an arcade game. And to be honest, that makes the fantastic graphics and tight gameplay all the more impressive. The game isn't huge, spread across just 16 screens, but it is challenging, and there are parts where you must sacrifice some of your precious life energy to proceed past an adversary. There are additional items to collect, as well as the spells, such as a bucket to put out a fire, and lead which can be used to turn into gold. The game's USP of course is its huge eagle that the player can transform into, and it really is some lovely animation. But strangely, the whole game can be completed as the eagle, so I wonder why so much was made of all the spells that can be collected and used. As an example of a really nice Spectrum arcade adventure, Alchemist is impressive, but as a very early arcade adventure, on a system only just finding its feet, it's a technical marvel, and I'm going to score Alchemist 8 points. Ignoring the blatant theft of the Star Wars theme, one criticism you could never really lay at Imagine's door is cashing in on previous titles by releasing spin-offs or sequels or clones. Good or bad, they were almost always very different. And Zip-Zap is another fine example. With the benefit of 40 years of retro gaming in hindsight, it's easy to see the similarities with Robotron in its arena battle shooter gameplay. But it's the similarities with another very different arcade game that kept me playing. That game is Time Pilot, and it's one of my all-time favourites. The constantly travelling robot uses rotational controls to outround in wide circles, but use the brakes and you can lessen those circles to avoid ploughing into enemies and losing precious energy. The aim of the game is simple. Collect 4 power orbs, then get to the transporter and be warped to the next level. But each of the 32 levels has unique enemy types, and you'll have to be a very good player to get anywhere near the far reaches of the game. With nice graphics, unique controls for a game of the day, and fan service, whether deliberate or not, to 2 really great coin-ops, Zip-Zap is this episode's hidden gem, and I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. So, that's all the games done, and here are the individual scores. Pretty mediocre on the whole, but dragged up slightly by the 2 games that actually provided some fun. The average game score for the collection comes in at 5.67. The packaging again scores highly, but I've dropped a point due to the fact that it's one tape less than the 16K version and the lid's now split into 2 parts. So it scores 9. With 34 points from a price of $19.99, that gives us a whopping 59p per point, so that only gets 5 points. And what all that means is that Value Pack 48K scores a total of 62%. And that puts Value Pack 48K in 4th place, just behind its 16K brother, Now Games, and our current leader, Arcade Force 4. In the Constructors' Championship, Beau Jolly currently sit in 3rd, but we'll see quite a lot of movement here as new reviews are added. In a moment, I'll list all the great resources used in the making of this series, and as always, stick around for the post-credits scene where I continue my Cascade Cassette 50 journey. Thanks for sticking around for my 4th review from the Cascade Cassette 50 tape. This time we're having a look at Barrel Jump, and if you're really desperate to give it a go, it's on side B, position 21. Barrel Jump is one of many games on Cassette 50 that's credited to Ulrich Technical Services, and so far that name has not been an indicator of quality. And unfortunately Barrel Jump will only drag the name down even further. It's actually difficult to call Barrel Jump a game, when all it really is a button pressing simulator. The premise is that you must press your key at the right time to make your little running man clear the required barrels, but as you have no control over the length or height of the jump, it's pure luck whether you make it or not. So you press your button, watch the result that the computer's decided for you, the end. I did manage to get over 5 barrels before the computer gave me a 3-inch jump and I landed on the first barrel. Yay me! 0 points.